Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. That's one of the most famous quotations from a physician called Hippocrates, who's considered to be the father of Western medicine. Welcome to Genesis in Medicine podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Victoria Joseph. I am so excited to have you here. This is the podcast where we delve into all things nutrition, health, and medicine. And we are grounded in truth, research, knowledge, as well as real life experiences. Now let's dive into the episode. Have you heard about diets, and do you think that they're a trend or they're actually something that works? So today we're going to talk about diets. And diets, we're going to try to explore, are they trendy or do they usually work? So what we understand is that social media, even mass media, even this media mainstream, they have a tendency of influencing us very easily. So, for instance, a certain hairstyle, a certain trend of fashion, a certain trend of speaking, a certain trend of posting, all those are influenced in our lives by social media. Have you ever noticed now that so many people's houses actually look the same? It's because social media has influenced the appearance of a modern looking house. But also, the social media has the tendency of influencing even when it comes to our diets, our eating habits. So I know there was a time, there was such a trend about superfoods, there's a trend about collagen, there's a trend about keto diet, intermittent fasting, and so many other diets. We've heard of that. But I want you to understand, as much as those diets are present and they can be working for some people, they can be bringing results. Today, I want us to explore each and every one of the diets, but we can see the pros and the cons, but also understand what exactly are these diets. So for starters, we're going to start with intermittent fasting. I think this is one of the most famous one of the most recommended kind of diets. So intermittent fasting, basically, it focuses on when to eat and not necessarily what to eat. So in that aspect, the timings of your eating, they're calling it intermittent fasting because there are some hours in the day that you will be fasting, you won't be eating anything, but then there is a window that you give yourself to eat the food. So some can eat within 8 hours, some eat within 6 hours, some 10 hours. It's really flexible depending on what is your goal. So when it comes to intermittent fasting, what it does, for instance, what you can do, the most important thing is that you need to stay hydrated, because in intermittent fasting, the hours that you're not eating means that you won't be using anything, you won't be drinking water, you won't be ingesting any kind of food. In that aspect, it's very easy for you to be dehydrated. So it's very important that you focus on staying hydrated. So as much as it has been efficient for some people, because some people practice it religiously, in a sense that there's a religious reason, there's a spiritual reason for fasting. So maybe they would fast for 12 hours, and in the other 12 hours or maybe 4 hours, that is when they will eat. So intermittent fasting is not necessarily about what am I eating? Am I eating carbs? Am I eating protein? That can be something that you can add on yourself. But originally, intermittent fasting is all about the timing of your eating, the window of your eating. Now, what are the pros? The pros are that it is flexible. In that aspect, as I've explained before, that you can eat, or rather you can decide whatever time window you're going to eat. So if you decide you're going to be eating for 12 hours or 8 hours or 6 hours, that is all upon you, based on what are your goals for this intermittent fasting. Another one is that fasting generally just helps in decreasing the risk of type 2 diabetes, even heart diseases, even obesity. And we know obesity is like one of the most common factors that bring forth the chronic conditions such as type 2 diabetes, heart diseases, cancer. Obesity plays a huge part in that. So if you have a practice of fasting, applying this intermittent Another thing that I would point out is cons. So those are the pros. We've seen that it's flexible and it also reduces the risk of some diseases. But the cons, and by that I mean the disadvantages of intermittent fasting, it can sometimes lead to overeating or undereating. So as much as you're maybe you have decided I'm not going to be eating for 16 hours, right? You're going to be fasting, but within the window of 8 hours you'll be eating. Now the problem comes, what are you eating? As I've said previously, it focuses on when to eat and not what to eat. So in that aspect, maybe you're overeating. So you add on your carbs, your saturated fats, all the unhealthy junk foods, which at the end of the day, you're misaligned with the goal. Because if the goal is for you to be healthier or to even reduce weight, that becomes a problem again. So you end up overeating. But some can even have the risk of undereating. Now the undereating comes in because you're spending most of the times not eating, you're fasting. That means your stomach size also decreases, your appetite also decreases. So sometimes when the window comes in for you to eat, you find yourself you're eating a very small amount of food, and at the end of the day you're starving yourself for the next 16 hours. So that can also be a problem because at the end of the day you become malnourished. Another disadvantage is that it's not really applicable for each and every group of people. So, for example, people who are breastfeeding, people who are on medications, such as insulin, the ones that have type 2 diabetes, they cannot apply intermittent fasting because they need to have regular intakes of food. So that can be a problem as well to that group of food. But the last disadvantage that I would speak about is that it may provoke eating disorders. So, for instance, if a person as I've said, they have fasted for a number of hours and then they have a window where they can now eat, the problem comes in that they might overeat, and it can even lead to a disorder of binge eating. So you are excited because now it's my time to eat, therefore you overeat. So for instance, maybe you weren't eating the whole day, now you want to eat, you were craving maybe junk food like hamburgers and all that. You might find yourself you eating even 8 to 10. And I know to some it might sound crazy, but there are people who actually live such a life and they console themselves by fasting, the other window of fasting. So they think that because I'm fasting for 16 hours, then the 8 hours, I can eat whatever I want. That can easily trigger eating disorders. And if you had an eating disorder before attempting intermittent fasting, that can also be a problem as well. So we don't advise for a person who has had eating disorder to dive into intermittent fasting. So that is all about intermittent fasting. Another kind of a diet that has been famous in the internet and all that is Mediterranean diet. Now this is considered to be one of the healthiest diets when it comes to nutrition. So this is a diet that is highly, based on fruits. It's based on veggies, fish and lean meats. But it negates dairy products. It negates red meat. It negates all that. It negates as well as sweet things. So this is the kind of diet that is usually encouraged by most scientists. It's a diet that has been researched worldwide and it's considered to be the healthiest. But as much as it is the healthiest, there are pros and there are cons, as we have seen with the intermittent fasting. So with the pros is that this encourages that thing we spoke about in the last episode, the diversity of foods, which considers that to be a balanced diet. So when it comes to the advantage of Mediterranean diet, it is more balanced compared to other diets. So because there is a variety of foods, there is legumes, there is nuts, there is seeds, there is lean meats, there is carbohydrates, there is fruits and veggies, a very small amount of carbohydrates, of course. But this has been the most encouraged diet. So that is the one of the biggest advantage of Mediterranean diets. And another advantage is that because it is a more of a balanced diet compared to other diets, then it has the ability of lowering the risk of the non-communicable diseases compared to other diets. So by non-communicable diseases, it's the same ones that I've mentioned before: hypertension, diabetes, cancer, even other autoimmune disorders. They are highly managed because this diet is favorable for that, so it lowers the risk. But the cons is that there is a high risk of having a vitamin D deficiency. Why are we saying that? Because vitamin D is acquired in dairy products as well, apart from the sunlight, which we are going to see in the next few episodes. Vitamin D can be deficient in our bodies if you do not use dairy products. Now we see in this diet the dairy products are cut out. In that sense, then you might be deficient of vitamin D, which can be a problem for your bone health, for your muscle health, for your neurological health. By that I mean your brain health and all that. So as much as it's a good kind of a diet, it can go long term, I'm not gonna lie, but then for it to be effective completely, I would also recommend that you take vitamin D supplements so that you can stay on track, that you won't be deficient of vitamin D. Now, the other diet that I will speak about would be keto diet. I think this is the most famous. I would think I would be saying that for each and every diet, but this keto diet, I think it went more viral compared to other diets, especially for the fitness gurus, if you know. So, what is keto diet really? Keto diet is sometimes it can be no carbs, sometimes it can be low carbs. It's very dependent. But it's a kind of a diet that encourages people to take more protein and fats. And by fats, they're talking about unsaturated fats. Unsaturated fats, in a layman's language, is healthy fats. So they say that the high protein diet, because you're not taking carbs, it encourages a process called ketosis. I think we've heard about this a lot of times. Ketosis helps in, that is, it burns the fat into energy. So instead of using the glucose as a source of energy, you use the fats as the source of energy. And in that sense, then it's easy for you to lose weight, right? Because we all do not like the fats. And then, so as other diets, it has the pros, it has the cons. So what are the pros? The pros is that it can really help you lose weight, because we have seen that the fats are the ones that are being used to provide energy in your body, and therefore the fat is being burnt. So if the fat is being burnt, it's easy for you to lose the body fat and hence losing the weight. But also it's very good to control type 2 diabetes. So, and I'm being very specific here. I'm saying type 2 diabetes because for type 1, it has a little bit of a disadvantage. So type 2 diabetes is the one that people acquire from lifestyle. So if maybe they were eating a lot of sugary foods, maybe they were obese, maybe they were all that. And type 1, just to differentiate, type 1 is the one that most people get when they are actually born with it. So it's not something that you acquire from a lifestyle modification. So keto diet helps when it comes to controlling the type 2 diabetes easier compared to other diets. But the cons, the disadvantage of this is that most people do not consume healthy fats. They don't eat healthy fats. And that is the problem. So they know that in keto diet, I'm supposed to consume fats, I'm supposed to consume protein so that I can get the ketosis process going. But then they don't eat the healthy fats, either out of ignorance or maybe affordability and accessibility. We don't know. But they end up eating saturated fats. Saturated fats are unhealthy fats. So because they eat unhealthy fats, they end up having high cholesterol in the body. The moment they have high cholesterol in the body, then already it's a problem. You're already triggering other complications in your body. You can have clogged blood vessels, and then eventually causing high blood pressure and all the other complications that can happen by having high cholesterol in your body. So it is also not, another disadvantage is that it's not recommended for people with type 1 diabetes because, as I said, there's some form of acidic production that might bring some sort of irregularities when it comes to the body regulation, when it comes to a patient with type 2, type 1 diabetes. So we do not encourage for them to use the keto diet. It's not helpful for them. It actually triggers more complication. So we usually encourage keto diet to be short term because it also lacks vitamins, it lacks minerals in the diet. And therefore, at the end of the day, if it's going to be prolonged, then it might lead to, mineral deficiencies and malnutrition, and that is not good. So for a short term, because maybe you just want to lose weight, yes, it can be used, but yes, consider the things that I've said. Another diet is a paleo diet. So paleo diet is famous from, it's coming from a Paleolithic era. Paleolithic era means a hunter-gatherer era. So basically you're eating like a hunter. So imagine yourself, you're in the forest, you are hunting for animals, that is your life. What will you be eating? I don't think you'll be eating rice. I don't think you'll be eating oats. I don't think you'll be eating all that. So Paleolithic era, or rather the paleo diet, it includes veggies, nuts, seeds, eggs, fish, and meat. But it is highly situated. I mean, highly focused on meat. But also there are fruits, as I said, there are veggies, there are nuts, because those you can access in the forest, right? So as much as it's a diet that has been used in so many fitness people, and it has been effective because it is high in protein, and when you're working out, you need the protein in your body so that you can, your muscles can bulk and recover and all that. But still, at the end of the day, there are other nutrients that are lacking, and it is very important to have a balanced plate. So what are the pros? The pros is that, as usual, it can be very helpful when it comes to preventing or rather reducing the risk of you getting type 2 diabetes, heart diseases, having obesity, because when you're a hunter, I mean, I don't know if you've seen the movies, even the hunters, the way they look, like they look strong and all that, because of the kind of a diet that they consume. So you are preventing yourself from getting the chronic conditions, but also you're preventing yourself from having obesity. But the cons, the negative part, is that it is not so much of a long-term adherence, because you miss most of the important nutrients, like from the grains, the whole grains, the legumes, which is also part of protein. Legumes are such as, beans, peas, chickpeas, lentils, all those are part of legumes. So yes, so another thing, yes, when you don't have this in your diet, it can bring forth deficiencies, and we know that that is not good for our bodies. So we encourage that it's not a long-term thing, it's a short-term thing. Maybe if you want to lose weight, maybe if you're trying to, control type 2 diabetes, maybe you're trying to control the high blood pressure or rather the heart diseases, then it's a good way to go. But of course, the meat has to be lean, because if the meat is not lean, then we're going back to high cholesterol, and then you becoming high risk of getting heart diseases, and so you're not solving anything. Another diet is carnivore diet. Now, this is an animal-based diet. By animal-based diet, it means that it's only based on the animal-based products. So that is such as meat, maybe milk, and cheese. Those are animal-based products. That is a carnivore kind of a diet. It's just animal-based products. Now, as you can see, the quickest advantage that we can talk about here is weight loss. Highly likely you will lose weight quicker than other diets. But then the problem comes in, the long-term risks are worse, because it may lead to cancer due to high intake of red meat, right? It can also lead to deficiencies because of the elimination of the crucial nutrients like vitamins, the minerals, the grains, the antioxidants, and all that. that can lead to even more problems. So the disadvantage is that the long-term risks are worse than the short-term ones. So yes, you might lose weight quicker, but the problem is you will not sustain these results because you will probably be malnourished. So yes, that is about carnivore diet. What about vegan diet? So vegan diet, I'm sure you've heard of vegan diet. I mean, there have been so many reasons why people have gone vegan. Some have gone vegan because, because of moral reasons. Some have gone vegan because of healthy reasons and all that. Vegan diet is basically the opposite of animal-based diet. So it's the opposite of carnivore diet. So that is the vegan diet is focused on plant-based products only. So you do not eat anything that comes from the animal, including eggs, honey, cheese, all that. All those things come from the animals. So plant-based products, plant-based diets, they don't eat anything that is from the animals. Most people tend to mix it with vegetarian. Now vegetarians, they can have cheese, they can have eggs. It's very dependent on what class of vegetarian you are. But vegan, they do not eat anything from the animals. Now, the pros of it is that because they are only eating plant-based products, then the inflammation is usually very low. So most of the biggest cause of problems, the chronic conditions in our bodies, the chronic diseases, is inflammation. Inflammation, your cells are inflamed. Something is just inflamed in your body. That brings forth chronic conditions. So it is best that when you have the plant-based diet, the inflammation goes low. So it is best for you to have a low inflammation rate. Even when we are eating balanced diet, we tend to advise people there are foods that help, like turmeric, they help in lowering inflammation. But for that to happen, for the plant-based diet, they don't have that problem. Them, the inflammation rate is usually lower compared to the ones that are eating meat or rather the balanced diet, the normal kind of a diet. But also because of the low inflammation and the kind of diet they're eating, it also lowers the risk of obesity, which right now we know is the source of so many problems. But the negative part is that highly likely you will have vitamin B12 deficiency because you're not eating meat, and red meat is actually one of the highest sources of vitamin B12. I know now they have created supplements and find ways on find foods or rather plant-based foods that have a little bit of vitamin B12 and all that. So yes, there is that, but still, when you do the plant-based diet without the supplements, highly likely you will have vitamin B12 deficiency. And vitamin B12 deficiency is very risky because it may lead to stroke, it may lead to depression, but also another disadvantage, especially in our African setting, it can be expensive because most products have animal products. You'd be surprised when you go in a supermarket or whatever product you're buying, you read the ingredients and you realize there's an animal product there. There's an animal product there. So you might find yourself your list is very limited of the things that you can eat. And something interesting about a human being is that when you restrict them, the more you restrict them, the more they'll want that thing. So the problem is if it is going to be a lot of restrictions and the list of exploring the foods is very small, then the long-term adherence is very low. The possibility of it being a long-term thing is very, very low. I can tell you from a personal experience, I have tried the plant-based diet, but I would only go for a month, and that's it. I can't go further than that because it's a lot of restrictions, especially in our African countries, and even some of the things that you have to create on your own at home. Because sometimes you're craving for that meat, you're craving for that cheese, you're craving for something, dairy products. So you have to find a way. Maybe you're you're making the cashew nuts milk, you're making the soy milk, and all that. That can be quite time consuming, but also can be costful when it comes to money as well. So, is it sustainable for our setting, our African setting? Not so much. Maybe some things have to improve for it to be sustainable. Another diet is a DASH diet. I love this diet. DASH diet, DASH, means dietary approaches stopping hypertension. So this is a diet that was created specifically for people that have high blood pressure. So either they were just diagnosed or they're living with high blood pressure, which is also called hypertension. So this is the kind of diet that is really low in sodium, high in potassium. So high in potassium, like it includes fruits, it includes vegetables, lentils, but also they encourage in the DASH diet, they encourage you use foods that are really low in fat. Now, this is a very good thing, and the pros are that it will lower the blood pressure. Highly likely, most people that have used this kind of a diet in a month or so, they already report that the blood pressure is lowered or it's under control and all that. And another advantage is that it's adaptable because there are no extreme restrictions. As you have seen, some of the previous diets, there's a lot of restrictions, right? But this one, no extreme restrictions. The only thing that is different here is low sodium food, higher potassium, and low fat foods. So you can make your way around, you just have to adjust some things, right? So the disadvantage is that low sodium sometimes can be problematic. So you can be eating the low sodium food and maybe it can be advantageous for you in the beginning, but while you're progressing, your sodium levels keep on going lower and lower and lower, and that is a problem because sodium is very important for your body, very important for the functioning of your heart, for the functioning, for the balancing of, we call it osmosis and all that. Sodium is very important. So if the sodium is extremely low, it can be problematic as well. But also you have to be very careful because your sodium is very low. If you're eating a high fiber diet, it may lead to you having a bloated stomach and even experiencing diarrhea because the sodium is quite low. Therefore, it's very important that if you're going to be eating the high fiber diet, introduce it slowly, slowly, slowly. Don't go back to the same speed that you were using before with the DASH diet. But it's a very adaptable kind of a diet, right? So if you're going to use this diet, it's also important to know your sodium levels, the sodium levels in your blood, so that you know even when you're limiting yourself when it comes to the sodium, you know how to handle this. When you're increasing the potassium, you know the levels that are there. And my very last diet this is a very interesting diet. It went viral for some time. It was a bit trendy, but did not last for a long time. It's called potato diet. Now, what is a potato diet? Potato diet is exactly what I'm actually saying. You eat only potatoes with spices, with light spices, no butter, no salt. You just eat potatoes throughout. Now, the pros, you won't believe this, but there are actually pros for this. The pros is that there's a short-term weight loss. You will have weight loss, but it will be short-term. That we assure you, because potatoes are starchy as well. But then the other good thing is that they're high in fiber and they contain some vitamin C and potassium. So those are essential minerals for your body. But the negative part of having a potato diet, I mean, come on, I think this is very obvious. It has a large deficit of nutrients because there is no protein, there is no vitamin, there is no fat, there's just potatoes, there's just starch, there's just carbohydrates, and that is not good in the long run. And as we have seen, as much as it may cause you to have weight loss, at the end of the day, it will be short term. So you might go back to the same road that you came through. But this one was mostly promoted by celebrities, and it wasn't really long term. So I thought I should just even include it because at the end of the day we're talking about trendy diets and diets in general. So we have seen this types of diets. You have seen the advantages and the disadvantages. I would highly suggest that you consult a doctor, you consult a professional, a nutritionist, a person that is actually an expert in this to help you even categorize what kind of a diet that will work for you at that particular time, what is the goal, and what time you're going to use it so that you don't cause your body even more stress and more problems than even normal. So I am so excited. I hope you have learned something, you have picked something or two. I would love for you to tell me which diet have you ever tried and what did it do to you? Like, did you see the results or did you not see the results? And if you went long term, how are you doing it? If you went short term, why did you stop? What happened? Please let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe and make sure you share this with your friends. Make sure you share this with the people that you know really, really need to understand these classes of diet so that they do not lose their way. I'll see you in the next